So Bitwig is 10 years old now this year, and I thought it's maybe a great idea to load up an older version of Bitwig Studio and show you around, basically make a tutorial on an outdated version of Bitwig Studio. And this here is version 1.3.16, which came out in 2017. Yeah, here's the release date, 2017. And the first version, 1.0, was released in, I think, 2014. Here, 1.0. March 2014, exactly. So we had to deal with the cycle of 1.0 for over 3 years. They did a lot of small little refinements, small little bug fixes, changes, until we moved on to 2.0. So in the cycle of 1.0, from 1.0 up until 1.3, which was over the course, like I said, over 3 years, we got a lot of nice little features. First up, in the first version, there was no pop-up browser. This one here, there was no pop-up browser. If you wanted to load in some VSTs or some effects, you had to use basically the right-hand browser, this one, and then drag stuff in. That's how it worked back then. So the pop-up browser was, I think, introduced around, I don't know, 1.7, 6, something around here, these lines. Then there was no grouping in the first version. Grouping was introduced, I remember this was 1.2. So here we got basically grouping tracks, so we could basically have multiple instrument tracks and then select these two and then use Control and G, and you had kind of a group track, and these two devices then feed the audio into this group track. So you had like a bus, more or less. Before that, we had to use audio tracks, or to misuse audio tracks. So let's say you have a polysynth here and another one, and then you want to group this into a bus. You had to use an audio track and call this then a bus, and then send the audio here. Instead to master, you send this to bus, and this one to bus, and then you have the audio basically here in the bus channel. Right? So this is how it worked before grouping. So grouping came in 2015, so 1 year later, basically. Also delay 4 device here. There was no delay 4 device before that. Holy shit. So yeah, the first version was pretty bare bones. I found one video I uploaded on my YouTube channel here, on this channel you're watching currently. This was 9 years ago. I have no idea what I'm doing here, eating and fiddling around in Bitwig in the first version. It was pretty bare bones. There was 0 features. There was nothing in there. It was just, you could create audio tracks, hybrid tracks, instrument tracks, and then you had a few instruments. I think it was only polysynth, the E, percussion devices, organ device, and this FM4 device, and that's it. And for everything else, you needed to use VSTs. No grouping, no resizing, no fade-ins here for the audio clips, no crossfades, nothing. It was very, very bare bones. And this was the version I was hooked on early on, where I came from Cubase, and I tried out Bitwig, the demo version here, the first release, and said, yes, this is it. I saw basically the future, because they had this neat little page, this web page, where you saw basically the early version of the grid, which wasn't released until 3 years later, but no one knew that back then. We thought, the grid is just around the corner. And also the network feature, the network layer, where they said you can then hook up to different users over the internet and make together music or jam together. I'm not sure if we ever get this in the future. I don't know if there's a need for that still. But yeah, this was basically, we were hooked on the current version, what's in there, and the bright future, basically, what's coming up next, right? So I was switching back then from Cubase to this and had a lot of fun back then. And I want to show you basically in here how we did music back then. So what we want to do first is here, we want to go to the options preferences and we want to change the default track volume to 0 dB. This is classic Bitwig, minus 10 dB. Display scaling, 175%, it's okay. Audio controllers, there's my keylab here already implemented. Plugin management. This was a big feature back then when Bitwig came out, sandboxing. That back then, I think when a plugin crashed in Ableton Live or in Cubase, everything crashed, the whole session, everything was down. And Bitwig was the first basically introducing here the sandboxing module or feature where every plugin from some vendors would run into one single sandbox. So when one plugin crashes, only this plugin crashes and you can reload then this plugin. This was a big feature back then. It was so nice because I had a lot of Cubase sessions where I need to reload the project every 5 minutes or multiple times in the beginning just to make every VST load correctly. So people forget this sometimes, how bad it was sometimes back then. Okay. So I think this is okay. Shortcuts. Okay. Bam. So let's delete this here. So let's start with the kick drum. So E-Kick is around for a long time now, over 10 years. E-Kick is the oldest device probably in Bitwig. Oh, this is how the audio clip looked like, or the note clip looked back then, yeah, with this triangle in the corner. I remember a lot of people were kind of mad because Bitwig removed here this small little triangle for some reason. There's also no resizing here. You can't resize. You can only push this button here to make it smaller, and that's it. Then I have to double click here to go in there, load down. Let's say we just do here some kind of maybe housey track. Let's go to 120 BPM. Loop is on, yeah. Nice. On the master I put the peak limiter. Don't get mad at me. Poor guy. This is way too loud for some reason. The default volume is 3.54 dB for some reason. I have no idea why. So there's also no right click and save default preset. Default is default. You couldn't change it back then. It's just, you know, you had to save a preset if you want to. How to save presets actually? How is this possible? Right click. There's no save preset. Oh, I think you have to use this button here, right? Yeah. Okay, I see. So you had to expand this here and then hit this button to save a preset. That's how it was. Nice. So let's use some hi-hats here, E-hat device. This is how it looks. At least we can also use here the clip launcher. Maybe put this in here. And then use some short loop. This is here the main offbeat hat. And then we change here the velocity. Something like this. Then we don't need a comp filter. And you can see we have here some modulator outs, right? This was because we hadn't the modulation matrix back then. It was a bit different. So each device had some modulators or some modulator handles like this here, velocity, timbre, pressure, and so on. So you had to use this to make the decay longer. Maybe use velocity. Yeah, nice. Also very weird default volume plus 1.19 dB for some reason. Cool. Then let's go for the clap. And here, actually, put this here and here. Make the clap very short. This is 0 dB. That's cool. Maybe put an FX2 on that. EQ in here. So all the EQs, there is no spectrum analyzer in there. That's also missing. It's completely empty. Maybe distortion. And a peak limit at the end. Okay, cool. Yeah, we can also group this here. Of course, it's the 1.3 version. You can call this drums. And let's see if there's actually a transient control. Yeah, there's. It looks exactly the same. And the peak limiter also here. Sounds a bit okay. Then we put down here some kind of bass sound, so use the polysynth for that. Push this down. Also make this maybe a bit odd in the time signature. Open up here the filter a bit more. I think there's also no sidechain modulator yet. I think you had to use the compressor, if I'm not wrong, the dynamics plugin, right? Dynamics here. And then there was here a sidechain we could use. And this is... I think you had to pull down the threshold here. I have no idea how this works. Oh, I think I get it now. Okay. Ratio. Yeah, the sidechain is basically the kick goes into the analyzer and the analyzer reacts to the kick drum, and then this analyzer puts the volume down, of course. I haven't used this in a while. Also here on the polysynth, you can see we have also here these modulator handles, right? And we have a lot of modulator handles here for the velocity, key tracking, timbre, and so on. Also, there are no features inside of the inspector on the left side. Here you have to switch the mono mode on, legato, and single trigger. Monophonic, yeah. Velocity, sensitivity, output is okay. So when you wanted to actually, let's say, you want to add another LFO. You have some LFOs here, right? But you run out of LFOs. You want to still add more LFOs. You had to use a device called LFO mod. Looks like this. I think this is still in the current Bitwig version. And you had basically a non-synchronized LFO at the top and a synchronized LFO at the bottom. But you can also go to Hertz here or synchronize the top one if you want to. So it doesn't really matter. And then you need to drag this instrument into the FX box here, and then you could modulate something here. So this is how you did it basically back then. But instead of an LFO here, I want to use a step mod. Looks like this. Works exactly the same. You had to push here the polysynth into the FX box, and then you can draw something in. And you can also, you can't draw here. You need to touch and handle and move every single draw here. Let's go to something odd. Then you modulate here, let's say the bass. It's a perfect house beat. Also, when you want to use, let's say, outboard gear, there was no real hardware instrument, or I think hardware instrument was already there, but not hardware FX. So let's say you want to, I want to go to the compressor, right? I had to use here the output, go to my compressor output, and then send this to my compressor. It looks like this here. Right, this is basically the gain reduction of the drums now. And then inside of Bitwig, you had to use another audio track, input, and then go back in. This is basically the return channel here. Return compressor. And then you had the drums here. Compressed. That's maybe too much. Huh? Something like this. You basically have then here the return from the compressor here on a single audio track. So this is how it worked back then, before 2.0, when they introduced the hardware FX devices. So the bass here sounds a bit weird. Maybe I go. Or maybe go to something different. Or maybe make this here even. Nice. So let's try out here maybe the, or let's go for the organ device. Let's try out this one. Looks like this. Sounds also like an organ device. But maybe we don't only need the primary. which is just a sine wave. Then we put the chorus on that. Reverb. Hull. Diffusion. Reverb time. Size. Tank FX. There will be a chorus. But FX. There's an EQ 2. Maybe after that, a delay 2. Let's go here to A, maybe. And now we want to use an LFO here, and we want to randomize, so we have to use the random shape, put everything into the FX box, and then modulate some stuff here. Also put this into unipolar mode, of course. And maybe the second one, also randomized. Or let's call this organ. There's also a tool device. This is how the tool device looks like. Okay, let's try out here the polysynth. We also want to take a look at the sampler. So here I want to use the ARP. With the ARP, there are only a few modes here, chords and up, down, up, and that's basically it. So we want to modulate this here, also with the step mod. There's also no dice button here to randomize this. Put the ARP in there. And this was also a problem. The ARP in here basically doesn't send audio or MIDI FX out to the polysynth. We also have to drag the polysynth into this FX box here to make it work. Then we modulate here this one. Yeah. Let's go for 4. I think 3 is enough. And then we'll put down here some chords. Maybe make this a bit longer. 4. This is 7, right? So now I want to use a step mod to actually change some parameters. So I have to call up another step mod, put everything into the FX box, and then draw in here manually some random things. And then modulate something down the line here. You can also use here an LFO stepped randomized, this one here, and then synchronize this to beat 8. And then modulate here maybe this. Unipolar, yeah. Maybe unison. Oh, this sounds like a bug. That's reverb here. The reverb broke. Can I switch this off? No. Some reason I broke the reverb. Okay, so in here we use a delay 2 and maybe an EQ just to get rid of the low end. Just for the background. Okay, so let's take a look at the sampler here, because the sampler was also pretty bare bones. I think I have here some kind of sample. Yeah, I have a hand pan here. This is B2. Key tracking. So in the sampler, there was no texture mode, no cycles mode, no... It was actually only start, end, and looping. Loop start. I think you can't even change the loop mode, so back, forth. This is reversed, yeah. That's basically it. There's also no amplifier here. Oh, it's the loop, okay. Okay, let's put down here some notes. Best track ever. So yeah, that's basically Bitwig 1.3. Would be interesting for me when you started to use Bitwig, with what version or in what year. So let me know in the comments down below. I think it's sometimes great to revisit some older software or some older hardware, some older gear you used way back then, and then dive into it with some new knowledge and just, you know, to experience it again for the first time. So yeah, this was Bitwig version 1.3. Maybe I get the first version 1.0 running on some system. I have no idea. Maybe I try out version 2.0 at some point. But yeah, I want to make basically this kind of exploration into the history of Bitwig with you today. Leave a like if you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and see you in the next video. Bye.